think a lot of people are intrigued simply by the title that I chose, The Book of Secrets.
Do you need to start the recorder?
If you want to.
Well, I think they're trying to record them all for the stake, aren't they?
I have no clue.
See if I can find a go button.
He was just in here and walked out, and so...
Oh, maybe it is recording.
Is there a red light on?
It says RAC, so I'm guessing it's recording.
Okay, there you go. We're good. Now he has to edit you and I out. Okay, anybody have any idea what the Book of Secrets is? I know there's one person in here who's been to this class before. Okay. Before I start, I just want you to know that I'm somewhat irreverent. I've been called that many times, and so if I choose to touch on topics a little bit irreverently, you'll understand. You don't have to forgive me, but you'll understand. How many of you have lost a loved one in the last 2 years? Okay. How about the last 5 years? Okay. How many of you have had to deal with the fallout of losing a loved one? And the fallout, I mean anything. Had to do any kind of cleanup because of them passing away. Okay, what kind of cleanup did you do?
Well, in my case, it was my mother, and lived in Salt Lake. We had to go there and go through all the stuff, me and my sisters.
Yeah.
Just take care of everything.
Everything.
Yes.
Okay. How about you?
Well, I was the only one living close, so I had to organize everything so that when the siblings came for the funeral and stuff, we could quickly go through her stuff and go through everything and deal with the
Okay, again, going through
obituary,
stuff, right?
deal with funeral arrangements.
Okay. How about you?
Yeah, so I was gonna say my dad was like in the military and stuff. And,
Yep.
you know, you have to go through and figure out
So same thing, we're dealing with stuff.
stuff.
Just stuff.
Checking accounts,
Okay.
check books,
Ah!
laying around.
Say
all
that
kinds of
louder.
stuff. Checking accounts and money that's there that you're wondering, okay, what's the next step here? And
Okay, so we're going to get a little bit personal here for a minute.
The funeral arrangements. I know when my dad died, my mom was kind of in a fog, and I was just taking her around to make arrangements for the funeral and for the,
Yeah.
to make a program. You've got
Again,
all
taking
of
care of
that
stuff.
and
Yeah. So I want to ask you a question, and I'm going to put you on the spot.
Okay.
How many passwords does Mark have in his life?
Probably about 3.
How
I
many,
know 3 of them.
how many do you know?
How many do I know? 3.
You know 3 of them.
He probably
All right.
has more.
Okay, how many passwords do you have in your life?
between work and
Everything.
bank accounts, everything,
Yep.
probably about 300.
300. Okay, so 300, and his wife knows about 3. How many passwords do you have?
How many passwords I have? Like maybe 1.
Okay. Bishop, how many passwords do you have?
Between work and everything, probably several hundred, I imagine.
Several hundred of them. How many passwords does your wife know?
She, I think, knows all the critical ones because I have them all on a document.
Fantastic.
I know.
I have them on a spreadsheet actually too, logged into the spreadsheet.
Does she know it?
Yeah, but I can't get to it if I wanted to.
Okay.
Well, she will after today.
How many passwords does your husband have?
I have no idea.
No idea. Okay. How many passwords does your wife have? 1. How about you? Are you married? How many passwords does your husband have?
A lot, I'm sure. I don't know.
And you don't know any of them. Okay. Between 3 and 3, we'll call it 4 years ago, my brother, at 4 years older than I am now, was up mountain biking with his son. He was very active. To show you what kind of shape he was in, I told you I'm a little bit irreverent. To tell you what kind of shape he is in, at his funeral, we lifted up the sheet off of his torso, just so we could show off to everybody that at 55 years old he had a 6-pack. He was in incredible shape. And at 55 years old, up mountain biking with his son, he literally dropped over dead. He didn't gasp, he didn't cry out, he dropped over dead. His hands were still on the handlebars. He just fell over. His son was for me to John away. And his son never even heard him fall. Son got another 20 to 50 yards up the trail, talking to his dad, asked him a question, he didn't respond, he turned around, his dad wasn't there, came back down the trail, and his dad was dead. So I call it the Book of Secrets, because after Rick died, it took one of my other brothers over 8 months to figure out where Rick had checking accounts and bank accounts and CDs and retirement funds. It took him months to figure out passwords. Do you know that if your husband were to pass away today, you can't even call up and change your electrical and your gas bill? Do you know you can't do that? If your spouse is not on the accounts with you, you don't even have the right to call up and cancel them. So if you move out of the house because your spouse dies or something, you can't even call and cancel services because you're not on the account. 8 months it took them to figure out all this stuff. My wife and I lived in Oklahoma for 8.5 years, and we quite frequently ended up going down into our storm shelter during tornado season. And we started thinking, what do we need to take with us? It's a storm shelter. It's barely big enough to hold all of us. If the storm hits us directly, the only thing that's going to be left is what's inside that storm shelter. You don't have room for luggage. You might have room for a few photo albums, if that's important to you. And that's it. You have room for a change of clothes, yourself, your kids, and that's it. So what are you going to take with you? Last year, a fire hit very close to here. How many of you were evacuated? Any of you? What did you grab when you left? How much time did you have, and what did you grab when you left?
I was at work, so I snuck home.
Okay?
Picked up my son, grabbed a change of clothes and a pillow, and went to a friend's house.
Nice. What if your home would have burned? What would you have lost?
We took our hard drive, I guess, but I didn't care about the rest of it.
Okay, so you took your hard drive. What did your hard drive have on it?
Pictures and passwords.
Pictures and passwords. We chose to take what we now call our Book of Secrets. What is in this book is everything we have. I know that I don't have very many copies. I was told that y'all would print them out. I have a few that you can kind of, I gave you one, right? That you can kind of look at and share as we're talking about this. You can just kind of look at each other and talk. So we developed what we need if we had to be evacuated, and it also turned into, we developed what we need if one of us dies. So what we have in this book is we have our wedding certificate, we have all of our birth certificates, we have all of our medical records for us and our kids, we have patriarchal blessings, we have blessing certificates, we have copies of insurance policies, we have copies of all of our utility bills with the account numbers on there, and then we've got a copy of our passwords. Now that's really scary, and I'm going to talk about a copy of the passwords because I encrypt them. So even if you grab my copy that has all my passwords on there, you're not going to understand what those means. I know what they mean, my wife knows what they mean, and that's it. So you can pick up my copy and you won't know still what my passwords are, but at least it's there encrypted, and my wife and I know what they are. Does that make sense? So that's why we call it the Book of Secrets. Whenever we went down into the tornado shelter, we grabbed the book, and everything else was safe. He grabbed his hard drive, everything else is safe. There is, one of these copies has it on there. There's a loss. I don't think I have it on my copy.
One of the headings.
No, it's not on yours. Who has a copy that's not stapled?
Here it is.
There's just one reference I need off of here really quick. Because I just added it. And it's a website that keeps passwords. Does anybody know of websites that keep passwords?
Yeah, there was one called BioLocker or something.
Okay.
I can't remember exactly, but it was something like that.
Okay, lastpass.com.
I think NSA does.
NSA does as well, thank you. LastPass.com
Free.
is one that I've heard people talk about that keeps passwords. I'm a little bit old-fashioned. I mean, I use computers every day, but I don't like them. Because if the power goes out, then, and you don't have them somewhere else, then you're just done. And if you keep all your passwords on LastPass and you're counting on them for your passwords, and their website goes down, then you're done. Again, anything you do out on the internet, you know, that's great, especially for the generation that's all they do is the internet, that's great, but you're relying on someone else. And when you keep something physical that you can hold, touch, and maintain, then you're relying on yourself. Does that make sense? So, the first thing, if you go home and print this off, the first thing it talks about is the materials you need, that's great, the instructions. You need to gather all of your documents, and that means everything. You need to sit down and brainstorm with your wife and figure out, with your spouse, and figure out everything that you have in your life. What are your bank accounts? What are your pension accounts? Your retirement accounts? Where are they? Who are they with? What institutions are they with? What are the passwords to them? Who's on the account? How do you have access to them? My dad died a year after my brother, and my mom had no clue what to do. Again, we were scrambling. So she knew a few passwords, but we got around my dad really easy because on the phone you can hardly tell me and my dad apart. So I got on the phone to so many institutions, I got on the phone to about 10 different institutions. Hi, my name is Randy Bastian and I'd like to close my account. Well, Verl, is there something wrong? Nope, nothing wrong, I just want to close my account. I'm dead. And we closed out credit cards, we closed out all kinds of different accounts through me calling them up and saying, I'm Verl, and I want to close my account. Well, you've been with us for 35 years. Yeah, I know. And I just don't want your account anymore. I died 2 weeks ago, and I just don't want your account anymore. So yeah, it is.
He's dead, he doesn't care.
Oh, it is illegal, right?
It is. I'm sure it's illegal. It's fraud.
It's called fraud.
Yeah. Just so you know, it is. It was the easiest workaround we had. Because otherwise, it would take months and months and months. Because Dad was on the account, he's old-fashioned, he took care of things, Mom didn't take care of anything, and she couldn't have closed out the accounts. They would have sat there. My grandpa did the same thing, and they dealt with my grandpa's financial accounts for 20 years after he died. So, I know nobody likes to think about it, but when my brother passed away, it brings a reality to life. You don't want to think about it, but at some point, you're going to come home and your spouse is going to be gone, or you're going to be gone and your wife and your spouse is going to be dealing with it. One of the two, yes.
I just have the opposite story. My dad died, and I was the executive of his account. He had books documenting everything. I had access to everything that he had within 3 months done. I had to wait 2 years to close it out just because I had some decisions that had to be made. But everything was documented. I had everything in my possession as an inheritance as well as an executor.
Nice. So that's a great example. And what I signed here today was at least, how many people in here? 20 people. And at least half of them, John raised their hand and said, I don't know my spouse's accounts and passwords. Yes?
What he said is a good point too. Everything was in order and it still took 3 months.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I talk to people all day long because I help Social Security recipients with benefit programs, and they don't understand. They think that they die and everything's going to be taken care of within a few days. It's not.
Yeah,
It's
not.
3
It
months
takes
is
a
sort
lot
of
of
like
time.
minimum. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, one of the other things that I like to put in my book is an emergency contact list. And part of it is when we evacuated from here, we have contact people here in the state, and we also have contact people outside of the state. Now, if you live in Oklahoma, like we did, it was important to have an emergency contact out of the state, because when tornadoes hit like they did this year, you don't have cell phone service in the state for quite some, well, within the city for quite some time. So whenever you can get out of the city, get some cell phone service, and then call out of state, it's a lot easier. So it is a good idea for you to have emergency contact information in the state and out of the state. Does that make sense? I also have I have my work contact people on here. I have neighbors contacts. Look at that, Don Paulson. And then on the back, I've got other information. I've got 911. I've got emergency and non-emergency police and fire numbers on here. I've got the gas company, electric company, water company, my insurance company, and I've also got poison control on here. How many of you have ever had to call poison control before in your life? Nice. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. When my twins were less than 2 years old, they got into a bottle of multivitamins, and iron can be fatal to 2 years old. And they ate like half of this bottle, and so we ended up calling poison control. The only reason I bring this up is because after we call poison control, they follow up. And if you don't do something about the call that you make to poison control, they will turn you into the authorities. So I'm just letting you know, if you call poison control, they follow up with you. Good thing we went to the emergency room that night.
He's not worried about fraud though.
That's right. Okay, let's see. I've got transcripts in here. I've got marriage certificate, birth certificates, social security cards. Now, the one thing that's scary about what I'm showing you to do is if somebody breaks into your house and they were to find this, they've got all the information, right? So my next question is, where do you keep a book, a document like this in your house? Okay, a safe, fireproof safe, good.
And
Okay.
make sure your spouse knows how to get in that safe.
Good. And where do you keep that safe?
Right next to your bed.
Okay, that's an idea. I'm going to talk about that. Any other ideas?
Attic, under the house, in the crawl space.
Right in the
Okay.
garage next to the car. When you leave, you can grab it.
Okay,
Cold storage.
okay. Lots of ideas. I'm going to tell you the #1 place not to keep it, and then you can go from there and decide where to keep it. Huh?
You'll say in my closet.
#1 place that you do not keep stuff that you consider valuable is in the master bedroom closet. Tell me why.
That's where it is.
Yeah, if somebody breaks in your house, that's the first place they're going, is a master bedroom closet. So if you keep a book like this, don't keep it in your master bedroom closet. Keep it somewhere else in the house. Make sense?
But if it's like bolted and you've got like a fake wall in front of it so it doesn't look like you've done anything.
That's your business.
Well, tell everybody everything.
No,
When are you guys away from your house?
So, I'll throw a little joke in here. I keep mine under my bed, and my .40 caliber sits right on top of it. So you decide if you're coming for it or not. It's a joke. You're supposed to laugh at me.
After your first comment, we're not.
Which comment?
About your illegal use.
Got it. Okay. Anybody have any questions? Let's see. I got passports in here.
Here's a question.
Yes.
I have a question, Randy. How often do you and your wife sit down to review that to make sure that everything is up to date and current?
About once a year. Now my passwords at work are not relevant. She doesn't need to know those. If if I pass away, work take care of we'll take care of all that stuff. But if any time my passwords change on utilities and banks and stuff like that, then I will, I'll reprint it out and put it back in here.
So that's just part of your routine of record keeping,
Yeah,
is what you're saying?
yeah. So I keep a spreadsheet and I keep a thumb drive. My spreadsheet is also password protected. Both my wife and I know the password to that spreadsheet, and the spreadsheet is also, it's not named something that if you were to go through that thumb drive, you would ever recognize it and say, wow, he's got a whole list of passwords in there. So it's named something really odd and quirky also. I've got the organization in here. This is my password spreadsheet. I've got the organization, I've got a website, I got a telephone number, the password, and it's encrypted. So let's just, when I say it's encrypted, if you use the name of your dog and it's, what's the name of your dog?
Keena.
Keena. How do you spell Keena?
Keena.
Okay, so if I were to use Keena on here just to encrypt it, I would just use that and then whatever odd number that you use at the end. And so anybody looking at that in the Donaldson family would say, oh wow, that's Keena number 13, and I know that's the password. But if John were to pick it up, he wouldn't have any clue what that meant. It could be Kira, Keena, Kind, it could be anything. So just find a way to encrypt your passwords to print them out so that only you and your spouse know what they are. Does that make sense? Yes?
One thing that I run into sometimes is there'll be a couple and when the second spouse passes away, their kids don't know where their life insurance policies are, they don't know where any of this stuff is.
We're both parents of that.
Yeah, there's got to be some way to get this information to your kids too.
Well, and that, you know, I'm not a financial planner, but if you're getting older in age, go get a trust going. Get everything you have into a trust, get somebody named as you know, caretaker of the trust like John was for his parents, and be organized that way. Absolutely. So, good point. Any other comments? Yes?
Do you have any ideas, or does anyone in the room have any ideas the best place to go to do the trust?
I don't. Huh? Yeah. I talked to John. John was set up. He's my home teacher. I talked to John and figured that out. Let me see.
I just did one a year ago, and I went to Squire in Provo, and they were good. If anyone wants to ask me later. But, on the passwords, if you and your wife know the secret, and what if you both get killed in a plane crash, and then you have the same problem with your relatives, don't you?
Yeah, you do, but if both of us are killed, we're not worried about somebody else trying to get benefits from our death. I mean,
I see.
This can be taken as far as you want to give it. And what I'm presenting is definitely not all-inclusive. It is something we put together to prick your hearts and your mind, to stop and think for a minute that really all is not well right now, because if I were to die, I would leave my spouse in a great predicament. And that's all this is meant to do. You go home and think, what is it I need to feel safe, emotionally and physically safe? If my spouse or my kids or somebody were to pass away, what do I do? One of the other things that we have in here is a funeral plan. So that we know what funeral, if I were to pass away, Shell doesn't have to make any of these decisions. She can open up this book and say, I'm calling this funeral home, and this is what I'm doing, and here's the people I'm going to contact to help me plan the funeral, so that in the period of grief, she doesn't have to sit down and be thinking through all this crap. Some of the decisions are already made and documented.
Are you saying you make all your passwords, like say you choose the name of your dog, Keena, and you make all your passwords the same?
No,
Because,
they're just all encrypted,
I
so
mean,
my
unless
wife
you
knows
have
what-
300 dogs or something.
Yeah.
How could you remember, you still, it sounds, I'm not quite sure how you encrypt 300 passwords, so you all automatically know what to
Do
do.
you remember that?
What I'm going to suggest to you, I don't even want to take responsibility for it. Because passwords, if you talk to anybody in IT security, passwords are, they need to be secure. They need to be difficult and secure. I would bet any amount of money that if you were to gather any of the people in this building today and bring them in here and sit them down, I'll bet every one of their passwords are very similar.
That's not the case for me, but I think you're right.
The majority are. One lady I work with, she laughed and she says, if you know my password to this, you know every password that I have in my life. She says, because I just can't think beyond one password. And there's a lot of people that way. It makes it simple and it makes it unsafe. So I'm not going to suggest to you how you take care of your passwords and how you make them up and whatnot. All I'm saying is, once you document them somewhere, make them encrypted, make sure that you and your spouse understand them. And if your spouse is already gone, then make sure one of your kids understand them. Whoever's helping you in life, make sure they understand. Okay? Any other comments?
Do you recommend, your comment on the utilities, do you recommend that all utilities be in both your wife's and your name? Because that's not the case in our.
Absolutely yes. When I left Oklahoma, I came out here and I was working out here for 6 weeks while my wife was finishing up taking care of things back there. There were 2 accounts that I had messed up. I didn't have both of us on the account, and she couldn't do anything with them. So she called me. I mean, it wasn't that big of a deal, but she couldn't do it. So when we got here, everything is in both names now, everything.
Has to be or, not and, though.
Yeah.
Well, but also, we had the same thing where I would call, and it was like the phone company, and they would say, well, you're not authorized to make any changes on the account. And
Yeah.
so I had to have my husband call them and put me as authorized to change things on the account. I don't know if that means that I can cancel that, but I know you can add someone to authorize your stuff. You don't have to close it out and redo it.
When you call them, that's a really good point. When you call, you want to tell them that you want your spouse to have all the same rights and privileges to that account that you do.
Right, but you don't have to like close out the account and add them to it or something
No.
like that. The bill still comes in his name, but I call him, and it's just like me, him calling who I call now.
Yeah. So I cannot stress enough how important it is to have both names on all your accounts. Just cannot stress that enough. Any other comments, questions? Has this caused anybody to think beyond what they thought before they walked in here today?
Yes.
Yeah?
Change my voice.
You're really concerned about this, aren't you?
I find it just very funny. But if you knew my personality, you would know I would push you as far as I could with this.
Awesome. I like that.
Who's gonna press charges? It's bad.
Exactly. I already told you that. Let me see here. Church records, account information. In the printout, I've got just an example of a sheet that you can use for financial accounts and the information. All it is an example. I've got an emergency contact list, and sorry, Bishop Martin, but your name's on here for the whole state.
Excellent.
And I do not have the funeral stuff in here. I think you can sit down and make all that up between you and your spouse. In my passwords, I even went as far as I've got, well, PayPal's financial, but I've got my Google stuff on here. I've got Amazon stuff. Anything that I've got a password on, I've got on this list so that my wife can get on and take care of it and close it out at some point. that's the bulk of what my presentation is. My presentation is to get you to think. Life is short. We don't have any guarantees. You don't have any guarantee that you're gonna leave here and go home tonight and that your spouse is gonna be there. You just don't. And most of us know that that's probably not gonna happen right now, but one of us in the next 2 years is gonna come home to that tragedy and have to deal with it. And if you've prepared for it beforehand, then all that stuff, you can grieve your loss and you don't have to worry so much about all the other stuff and trying to get through all that muck. Because it's tough. It is tough trying to figure all that stuff out, yes.
How long do you think it took to put your book together? I mean, when you kind of went, okay, these are the things that I need.
It took us a couple months to do it.
Okay. Just
Yeah.
off and on for.
I think if you focused, that was a couple months, but that wasn't really focused. I think you could do it in, I think you could do it in a week. It's not that tough. You've just got to make sure that you gather all your documents and you brainstorm and figure out, you know. Even after Shell and I put this all together, we kept adding to it. She's like, oh, do you have that account? I'm like, oh, no, whoops, sorry. And, you know, even still, we have a Scott trade account that she set up several years ago. And we have to close the account out and reopen it because she didn't put my name on it. And so, you know, we don't have that much money in there, so I'm not worried about it. But there's still little things that are still straggling out there that we're still trying to put together, yes.
There's, you know, there's also apps for your cell phones that keep your passwords just as a, that's what I do because I can never remember them anyhow.
Yeah.
For work and personal use, and then from there I can go to that and make sure my documents and everything are up to date.
Yeah. And again, I'm just going to throw this out as a word of caution. I had that same thing, and then I forgot that password. And after you log in 3 times erroneously, it wipes everything out,
Yeah.
and I had to start all over again. So again, if you can rely on yourself, that's a big deal. Any other comments? Yes?
Well, I just had the experience. I've been in Seattle babysitting grandchildren while my daughter and her husband went to Hawaii for a couple weeks.
Okay.
And when they got home, my daughter said, on the plane ride over, I started thinking, what if this plane crashes? And mom's left with the kids and she doesn't know anything. I had no information other than, you know, she knew I could take care of the kids for 2 weeks. And she says, I promised after that, either we do things together to give when we go someplace or else. Andy and I can't go on the same trip together.
Yeah.
You know, one of us has to stay home with the kids.
Yeah. Good.
So,
That made you think, didn't it?
yeah, and she said the whole trip, that kept coming into her mind, and it kind of was like this little rain cloud over
Yeah.
your trip.
I have 2 missionaries out right now. I have power of attorneys in here for that. I can't think of what else we've got in here. Powers of attorney, insurance, we've got titles in here. I mean, we could hurt if somebody were to steal this, but again, it's kept in a place that you wouldn't easily find it, so I'm not that worried about it.
Randy, do you have the original documents or do you have copies?
You know, my originals are in here. We have scanned copies on our hard drive, obvious, but these are my original documents. You know, if my house were to burn down and we have this with us, I don't have to worry about replacing anything. My brother's house, one of my other brother's homes burned, gosh, it's been a long time ago, 10 years ago, and they didn't have anything like this, and it took them so long to replace birth certificates and marriage certificates and all kinds of things. And you know, it's so easy if you just you can grab a fireproof safe for a couple $100 and you have it hidden somewhere in your house and you gotta leave fast and you grab that and you walk out, you got every document you need. You don't have to worry about calling up and getting them replaced. So, again, you can call it Book of Secrets, you can call it whatever you want to call it, and it's just to get you to think.
we're done 10 minutes early unless anybody has any more comments.
Thank you.
So, thank you, I hope it helps. Whatever documents I have, just to help, you prepare something like this, they're out on the website for this preparedness fair, and, anyway, thanks. And if anybody ever has any ideas for me that I can incorporate into this, I'd love to hear it.
You can get somebody to help me move my safe, thanks a lot.